Hello. So today I'm just gonna talk about a little Deltarune theory while playing a game. And my Deltarune theory is that, so basically I'm just gonna talk about like who the knight can be and who isn't the knight. So that's really all I'm gonna be talking about. And see what I want to say is, so like who can be the knight and who can't be the knight. The reasons for who can be the knight is people who, one, have not been in the same scene as the knight, and so they can't have been in the same scene as the knight, and two, they must have motives for kidnapping, like Toriel, Undyne, and Asgore. Yeah, like major chapter 5 spoilers. Just spoilers for the whole game. But so this was a lot of the characters in Deltarune. So some of them are obvious, like Susie and now Chris. But this also rules out. But this also ends up ruling out some that people had theories for. Some people had theories for Asgore, which we definitely now know it isn't. I think some more. Oh, I'm blanking now. But okay, so I'm gonna get to the main part of this theory, and it's basically that no one is the knight, or at least as far as we know. Because think about when a person in Monster enters the Dark World, their appearance doesn't really change. Like, sure, their clothes change and stuff, and they start looking cooler, but other than that, their physical appearance doesn't really change. Like, sure, Chris's skin turns blue, but yeah, and this is true for every single person we see. Meaning that. So, but what I think the knight is, I don't think the knight is someone that we know. I think the knight is an object. I can't remember what, because, objects' appearances change heavily when they enter the Dark World. Like, for example, a playing card becomes the Chaos King from Chapter 1. A computer becomes the Queen. A TV becomes Senna. You get what I'm saying. Like, a picture of a guy turns him into that guy. So, yeah. So basically, what I want to say is that no one is knight. The knight is some sort of object for it to change that much. And this is also going to disprove a Carol Knight theory, and the way the objects change in Deltarune also disproves the Carol Knight theory, because the main theory that's Carol, because the main reason people think it's Carol, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that Carol has a sword, but if it has a katana, but if it was Carol and she was using that katana, then that katana would be vastly different. It would be like a ginormous sword. Now I'm talking like ginormous. If she was using that katana, like a pencil for Chris becomes just a normal sword. What the wrong knight has is something different. That's what I will say. What the knight has is something very different. So basically, knight must be a person. I mean, an object. And I'll link I can't remember what it is right now, but I saw a theory talking about who the knight was, stuff about the knight. And they were talking, and in the theory, I'll link it. I'll link the video in the description. Basically, we're talking about how in Deltarune there's a lot of stuff about CDs. Asriel apparently has a lot of CDs. So does Des. Some of the objects in the game are literally just called CD something. There's a lot of stuff about CDs. So, what if the knight isn't actually like anything, but is instead just a CD? So that would be a bit lame if this giant force that we have no idea what it is in the game is actually some stupid CD. But I mean, it kind of makes sense, honestly. Like, maybe the CD could be about some game. The CD could be about a game that has like a knight of some sorts in it, and that's why the knight exists, because it's a CD. Now, how it gets into Dark Worlds, I have no idea. I genuinely have zero idea how it makes Dark Worlds. I still don't know. Either that, or the knight would have to be someone who has armor. And I need to replay those and figure this out, but you guys can figure it out. But who in the game owns like some sort of armor, or like some sort of like a costume that can become the knight in some way? Because whoever that is the knight. That is who the knight is. Now, I've seen a theory going around that the amalgamation of Chris and Noelle on the weird route is the knight, because the Deltarune has only one ending, and the weird route isn't ending; it's a loop, and that's the theory. There was a lot of evidence going for it, I will say. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right for this big bad entity in Deltarune that has been built up to this whole time. It's actually just this weird amalgamation of two characters from a whole other thing. I'm stupid, so I don't really have much evidence to disprove it. Once I replay Deltarune, I'll probably have something to prove it, but you know, just don't make too much sense, you know. Basically, what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, the knight. The reason for the knight is, so basically the knight is either one, someone we haven't met before, or the knight is someone you haven't met before. The knight is someone who has not been in the same scene as the knight, obviously, and the knight is someone who owns some sort of armor and something that can become a sword. No, something that can become a sword, pretty easy because, you know, a pencil can become a sword, you know. And I'm guessing a lot of people in Hometown have pencils, so that doesn't really help. Something a bit bigger than a pencil, maybe it's like a number 3 pencil. I'm not just kidding. Yeah, you know what I mean. Woo! Damn it. So yeah, and that's my theories for the knight. But I'm not gonna leave this video on that. I'm not actually like go through some theories I have about who the knight could be. I have to actually think. So the knight can't be undone. So the reason, reasons. I'm gonna have to make half the stuff up as I go, but reasons that. Okay, so reasons that the knight may take Undyne and Asgore and try to take Toil. Now, I was talking to my friend about who the knight could be a while ago, and I was like, well, and they also thought that the knight was an amalgamation of Chris and Noelle from the Weird Route, and I asked them, well, what motive would they have for kidnapping Asgore and Toil and Undyne? And it's because of the shelter code. Because the shelter codes have to do with an officer's badge. Undyne is like, they're really the only person we see as an officer in the whole game. So yeah. The other code is the Deltarune, which has a lot to do with the church. Who is in the church and is a very prominent member in it? Toil. And I'll admit that doesn't really help much because there's a lot of people in the church. I think it would make more sense for it to be Gerson's like daughter, or is it his? I don't know. Both. Well, I didn't read that. I didn't pay attention that much. Again, I need to replay the games. Once I replay the games, I'll probably make a follow-up and talk more about it. But until then, this is what you got. So, what do I think? Oh, and the other thing was the pine tree. Asgore has a lot to do with plants and stuff. Pine trees are a plant, because trees are a plant, so, you know, maybe. It doesn't really seem that much like evidence. We know Chris is working with the Knight, and maybe in some way the Knight thinks that Chris has failed them, so to punish them, they take Asgore or something. Because I really don't see a reason for the Knight to take Asgore. Or maybe the Knight just saw Asgore there and was like, I'll take what I can get. Because they're not gonna take Chris because they're working with Chris. Valsai is Dokino, so really, what's the point? They seal the fountain, then what? Valsai's gone. Or Valsai just like reappears in the next Dark World that Chris and Susie go into in chapter 6. And they could have captured Susie, but like, I mean, if I was doing that, I wouldn't have captured Susie either. So, yeah. What I have to say about the Knight, the Roaring Knight. So, I'm gonna think some more because this is gonna be going on. Hold on. Yeah, so I'm probably gonna end it here actually. It hasn't really been going on for 10 minutes, but don't really have much else to talk about again. Once I replay the game, then I have much to talk about because I'll have stuff memorized. Then I'll come back again, make a follow up, and talk about stuff. But until then, yeah. Alright, see ya.